Good evening and welcome to the Monday, April 8, 2013 Board of Education meeting. The alert among you have probably noticed that we have some special guests here this evening. So with the board's permission, well, let's start with a Pledge of Allegiance. I'm sorry. We have just added that to the agenda, so I'm not quite used to it.
Right.
So. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. With the board's permission, I'd like to add two agenda items, please. One, a report from the Apple Pie Robotics team. I understand that they've had a very successful last week or two, and so I think they've asked for some time to give us an update about that, and so with the board's permission, we'll add that as agenda item number 3. And then we do have a very brief executive session on personnel that will not involve a vote, but we'll add that at the end of the meeting. Is there a motion to add those to the agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Thank you very much. So who would like to tell us about the Apple Pie Robotics? Who's our spokesperson?
We're going right.
Please come right on up.
Hi, I'm Sean Hackett. I'm a freshman on the Apple Pie Robotics team. This is my first year, and I really became intrigued by the club at freshman orientation when they were displaying the robot and just driving it around. And from that point on, my life just became consumed by robotics. And I now spend 5 to 6 days a week at the shop during the build season. And I've been learning the various fields of engineering, including mechanics, electrical, drafting, and it's just experience you can't really get anywhere else at this age. And one of the best parts of robotics for me is being able to work side by side with these great engineers from prominent businesses such as Sikorsky, Covidien, Pratt & Whitney, Rockwell Automation, and it's just great to build these connections and work side by side with them and attain knowledge that, as I said before, you can't really get elsewhere. And I'm just grateful for the experience, and I just am looking forward to another great 3 years. So.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Jason Wayner. I am currently a sophomore in high school, and it is my first year on the robotics team as well. I joined robotics in the hopes of becoming an Imagineer for the Disney company, and I am currently a programmer in the workshop. And what a programmer does is it gives to the robot a complex set of instructions, and with the instructions, it must perform and then fulfill the simple task at hand, such as tossing a frisbee, which we will see in a few minutes or moments. Additionally, I am a scouter in competitions. In case you are not aware what a scouter is, we all stand out on the sidelines and observe the performance of other teams with robots, and we take note on its strengths and weaknesses, which will become very vital to us when we pick our alliances. Robotics has helped me become more analytical and looking at all sides of a problem and finding new and innovative ways to come up with solutions. I've also made new friends, and it helped me to expand the number of people I might have not normally worked with, and I can honestly say we have come together as a family to achieve our common goal, to win.
Hi, my name is Megan, and I am currently a junior on the team. Personally, for me, being on Apple Pie has been extremely rewarding because of the opportunities it has provided me with. For example, for the past few years, I've both written the essay and made the presentation to the judges in the hopes of receiving the Chairman's Award, which is FIRST's most prestigious award. In doing so, I have become confident in my public speaking skills and learned to develop and value my skills as a writer. Additionally, before joining the team, I was terrified of power tools and overall baffled by the whole process of engineering. However, through being on the team and the support of very knowledgeable mentors, I've become exposed to fields I would never have before experienced, such as metalworking and programming. Regardless of what fields I decide to pursue later in life, the knowledge and experience I've gained while being on Apple Pie will be invaluable to my future success. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Virginia Gresham. I'm a co-captain and senior on the team. Robotics has been an indispensable part of my high school career. It has been both enlightening and empowering. As part of Apple Pie, we each learn, through the several hundred hours that goes into developing our robot, that we can do anything we set our mind to do. We can delegate, lead, fundraise, research, self-advocate, and present to both large and small groups. Troubleshooting and teamwork are key aspects of Apple Pie. As co-captain, it has been exciting to see the team grow and expand over the past 3 years. When I first joined the team, there were 15 members. We have since doubled in size, and we have a few wins and second places under our belts. It's not only how many lives robotics touches, but how Apple Pie impacts each and every one of us. Before joining the team, I didn't know what I wanted to do after high school. I still don't. But after 3 years on the team, I find myself basing my college decision on each school's engineering programs and facilities. I hope to stay involved with FIRST as an alumna and future mentor, and I can thank Apple Pie for this tremendous new path I am exploring. While we are getting our robot set up, we would like to watch the video if you don't mind. Thank you.
There are many factors which are necessary for the growth of an apple tree. Ample rains, warm sunshine, fertile soil, and loving hands. Aided by these, a seed will grow into a sturdy tree that will bear much fruit in years to come. This tree is First Team 2067, Apple Pie Robotics. Our founding sponsor, Bishop's Orchard, provided us with the initial grant that allowed our team to take root. Since then, our donor list has grown to include international Fortune 500 companies and local businesses that care deeply about our community. At the core of Apple Pie is our diverse group of passionate and supportive mentors. While they vary in their professions and talents, they have in common their lasting dedication to our team's efforts. As a tree gains years, its branches multiply and grow, allowing it a greater impact on its surrounding environment. One major focus of Apple Pie is influencing today's youth with programs to excite them about science and technology. These children represent blossoms with great potential to create and participate in an ever-changing global environment. Apple Pie is proud to be a 4-H team. We continually look for ways to blend our town's agricultural heritage with the technological focus of FIRST Robotics. Chick Day, 4-H fairs, and Guilford's Donkey and Pony Show are events that provide outlets for us to talk with attendees about the FIRST program and, of course, our robot. FIRST encourages us to give back to the communities that provide the support necessary for our sustainment. On any weekend, you may find us washing cars for local seniors, raising money for Parkinson's research, or providing an affordable rabies vaccination clinic. Our cruise nights have become a very popular summer social activity. Attendees enjoy some barbecue, listen to music of the times, and watch the sunset over the grassy fields. And then, there's the free hot cider stand at the Guilford Tree Lighting. In 2006, Apple Pie embarked on a journey to shape the future of tomorrow. Apple Pie's alumni are just now graduating from colleges. They're in their early stages of making the positive impact on our society and the world. It is time for the harvest. Our orchard continues to grow, one tree at a time.
So, as you'll see over here, this is our robot, and
There are many factors which are necessary for the growth of an apple tree. Ample rain, warm.
so this is our robot Zippy, and its task this year was to shoot frisbees up into high goals, and also hang off of a pyramid. So it was kind of like ultimate frisbee with a little playscape involved. But Sean's going to try.
During the game, there's not the wire connected, they're usually all wireless, and there's usually a phone here. So first gonna kind of demonstrate how to shoot.
We're not going to do it. We're trying to dial it down so we don't hit anybody.
Thank you.
Hit that one, but we'd like it not to destroy
Well, I did a lot better than Hartford.
Frisbee team have the same level of skill.
Yeah, maybe. So this aspect, a lot of other teams weren't able to do. We were one of the 2 teams at the WPI Regional and at the Connecticut Regional that were successfully able to do this, and this gave us a leg up on the other competition. And are you guys going to deploy the hanging mechanism? Okay. Oh, yeah. So there's, as I was talking about, there's a playscape that we sort of have to climb up, but it is called the pyramid, and it's 60 inches off of the ground, and then, no, 36, wait, what's the exact? 30, 60, 90 are the 3 different heights, and you get either 10, 20, or 30 points for getting up to the highest. And obviously the faster that you can do it, the more efficient it is during the competition. So these are our hanging mechanism, and we could get 10 points for our alliance in less than 5 seconds. And there's often times that we would hang, and then we would shoot frisbees into the baskets. So it was just a more effective way about the game, which was called Ultimate Ascent. And is there anything else that we're going to? We'll take questions at this time, if that's in the agenda.
Tell them to look on YouTube as far as seeing the competition.
Yes, there are YouTube links to our performance in the competition. Our website also has video clips and photographs, and our Facebook page as well.
So tell us about the competition.
So the competition at Hartford, there were 56 teams, and at WPI it ranged because of the huge snowstorm that we had, but there was about 42 teams there. And the difficult part, it's my job as what I designed throughout my years on the robotics team was a effective way to analyze each of the different robots. So at each competition, it would be my job to go around with the help of other scouters and analyze each other robot and see how well the aspects of their robot could work with ours, because we're a mainly offensive robot. What was our top score for a match? 123 points, and at Connecticut, and then at WPI, because we didn't have as much experience, it was less. So we consistently show improvement throughout the season as we go up. And there are thousands upon thousands of people at these events. Each team is usually much larger than us, so we've had to work with other teams to get all the information on all of the different robots, and it would take a lot of time. It takes a lot of time to go about. We spend 3 days at these competition sites, and you work really late in the night, and you get up really early, and it's a lot of fun and a lot of stress. But does anybody have anything else to add about the competitions?
How about introducing the rest of the team members that are here and the mentors that you have in tow?
So would everyone like to stand up who's on the team and a mentor? This year we have about 32 to 36 students on the team, and then we have 15 mentors. There's Mr. Page, hello, and then Mr. Scott and Mr. Vandergritten. and Mrs. Barry, and Miss. Do you guys want to just say your names so I can't really see around the TV? So, say. And as you can see, we have a lot of parents in the audience as well. A lot of the parents join on as mentors, and then they become so involved with the team that even after their kids graduate from high school, they stay on with the team and help us. That's why we have such an amazing group of mentors that are so dedicated. And they really make it possible for us to learn everything that we can learn.
Terrific.
What was your budget this year?
What?
What was your budget this year?
This year was about 30, less than that? 20,000, sorry. We've had, what we do to remain sustainable is we raise money a year in advance because a few years ago, our leading sponsor backed out how many days? It was like 5 days before we had to submit $5,000. Each competition costs about $5,000 to go to, 5 to 7. So before we had to put in this money, a leading sponsor backed out. And if we hadn't had this way to go about the team, raising money in advance, we wouldn't be able to be sustainable as a team. And it really allows us more flexibility in terms of what we do. Yes.
I have a fifth grader who's very into the Lego Mindstorms thing, and I was just wondering, do any other programs expand into the middle schools, or
Yes,
do feeder programs, or
we
is that
do.
happening here?
Mrs. Van Gritten helped start the FLL team that we.
Anybody can start a team. The only restriction to the Lego League, which is the middle school version of the robotic, big robot, is 9 to 14-year-olds. A team can only have 10 members, and a coach for a team can only coach up to a maximum of 2 teams. So when I have a list of like 45 kids, I would love some other people who are interested in coaching a team. It doesn't take engineering skills, it takes more keeping the kids focused and organizing skills. But that competition it ranks the kids equally on teamwork, project presentation, and on the robot game, which uses Lego Mindstorm. This year's theme was all about senior solutions, so it dealt with what issues that people had that seniors have to deal with as they get older. And the project group had to look, find and figure out problems seniors have and come up with a solution. And they invented a seat that would help people get out of the restaurant chair. So it has, all the programs in commercial are very geared toward something that they can use later in life, no matter, and it's very pertinent. So all the stuff we're trying to teach in the schools,
If there's people out there interested in
Can I suggest, especially as we're trying to get people maybe to help out, if you could come up here so we could get it on TV, actually? I should have asked Ms. Vandergrinten to do that, but
just going to say, if there's people interested in the FLL program, First Lego League, or otherwise, please contact our team through our website, applepierobotics.org, and we'll get you involved. So,
what kind of experience would somebody need, or what kind of background?
really, for the Lego League, not too much, just strong interest, willing to work with kids.
Do they need experience with Legos?
That would help, but not mandatory. Usually the kids have that.
Diane is disagreeing. All right, Diane, come on up.
Hi, it's Diane Vandergrit. Contrary to the name, Lego League is not building with the Legos. It uses the Lego Mindstorm robot, and the obstacles are made out of Legos, but the robot actually has to perform all the tasks by itself. And so the kids have to, everything is autonomous. The kids have to pre-program the robot to go out onto the table, do something, or bring something back and come back, because they can only touch the robot in one quadrant of the table without a touch penalty. So you don't have to know how to build Legos. You just have to have an interest to work with the kids, and any one of us can help you along the way. But an interest in doing it is really all that you need. Yeah.
Terrific.
But, yeah, if you just email us or get through the website, and we'll steer you in the right direction. And the season for Lego starts in September, so I might do some things with programming here when we finally get kind of slowed down. But Lego season is September to December.
So our season is 6 weeks, and it starts in January, and it just ended well, it's still going on for those who are going to World Champion. Well, okay, we have 6 weeks to build the robot, and then after that, we're not allowed to touch it until our first competition. But it works so we as students can help mentor the other FLL teams, and they can come and see what we do as a team, which is really exciting. So, does anybody have any more questions?
Any other questions?
It's great.
Oh, fantastic.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you very much for having us.
All right, that's a terrific program. That's one of the programs you really don't see enough about. And I'm glad we were able to spend a few minutes with them tonight. First item on the agenda is a couple of the action on the minutes of March 11 and March 25. Is there a motion to accept those minutes?
So moved. Second.
Any changes, corrections, additions?
I had a couple. On page 1 at the bottom, Senator Meyer discussed a proposal to eliminate the property tax on automobiles and the possible impact this will have in Guilford, which could be 3.7 million loss. The next sentence, if this tax is eliminated, a substitute will need to be found to be able to fund education. I think that the town has a money problem there, and I think as part of the town, we may be part of that, but that seems to suggest that 3.7 is going to come right out of our budget, and I don't think that's what Senator Meyer said.
Direct relationship, no.
So
I think it would be fair to just have that reflected, the impact on town finances.
Town finances, yeah. I'm just concerned that anyone reading it would think it would be a direct.
And over on page 6, where
Right.
it says, Mrs. Dudley, that should all be Dr. Balistraci.
11.1 through 11.6, right.
All right, with those additions? Yes.
Senator Ed Meyer doesn't have an S after his name. I do, so we are not related. So let's give him his real name, which is Meyer.
Okay. So with those corrections, all in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
Abstain.
All right. Dr. Balistraci did the expenses for
Yes.
March?
Yes. Expenditures for the month of March are $4,119,140.31. Expenditures and encumbrances through the end of March are at 63.54% of the budget as compared to 67.02% last year. Very briefly, salaries, the percent of the budget expended approximates the prior year. Employee benefits, slightly higher than the prior year. The pension line is higher than the prior year due to actuarial expenses incurred for new reporting requirements for the annual audit. Purchase services expended slightly higher than last year. A lot of that is about individual variations, although we do continue to see higher expenditures for legal services and special services. And for those of you who didn't notice, we had a little snow this past winter. So we did see expenses in snow removal at $30,455. Tuition, outplacement tuition, percent of the budget at this time is a little bit lower than the prior year. Supplies and materials, somewhat lower. Capital, somewhat lower than the prior year. And transportation, percent of the budget approximates prior year. We went over the financials in the Finance Committee just prior to this meeting, and it was reported that, again, we're looking at possibly 40 to 45,000 that we will be over by the end of the budget. So we are watching finances very closely for the last 3 months of this year. To
By
make
being
sure that-
over, you mean that we
I'm
will
sorry,
have a
yes,
surplus?
my apologies, that there will be a surplus. My apologies. I am not an accountant, one can tell. So we are watching that, but we expect to be fine by the end of June.
All right. Then is there a motion that we approve the expenditures for the month of March?
So moved.
Second?
Any other questions, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? All right.
I recuse myself on the warrants for David Myers.
All right, okay. Item 5, is everybody else, can I just ask why, everybody else, are you here for lakes or for the food service or lakes? Is it most people for lakes? Can you raise your hand if you're here for lakes? All right, not that big. Everybody else is what, food service? Or
Some general.
general? Okay. I'm just trying to figure out if we can kind of shuffle things around the agenda and get people, of course, you'd probably like to get home too. With everybody's permission, maybe we can take student representatives now, and then we'll circle back for public comment, and then we'll keep moving. So why don't we go to the student representatives now?
So with the approaching spring break, we have some, everybody's looking forward to a nice time off. We also have a few groups where students really collect themselves going out and doing some good things. The Pilgrim Fellowship is heading out to Johnstown, Pennsylvania to do some philanthropic work on that town that just gets ravaged by floods, seeming like every decade.
After the musical, the week after spring break, the musical will be on. I'm in it. I play the vice principal, so I sort of take school administrators down to peg. If you're offended by that, don't have to come. I just thought I'd give you that warning in advance. So it's going to be fun. It's the last week April, the weekend of April, and the first weekend of May.
And speaking of the spring, Mr. Misseni made arrangements for during lunchtime where we can actually start eating outside again, which is today was a perfect day for that, and I think kids are pretty excited about that.
And
luckily this week, just to add on to that about eating outside, precautions have been made because some seniors approached Mr. Missenti and asked about eating outside again. But doors will still be locked. There's the one door by the cafeteria where all students will go in and out during lunch. Mr. Missenti's making sure that we are a safe school and nothing bad happens to us, so that's good. This week is a wonderful week at Guilford High School because it's SAD week. And SAD is a club here at our school that's all about making decisions that aren't destructive towards students' future. And so today we were visited by a improv troupe, and the juniors got to go to an assembly where they got to see about how badly drugs can hurt your life and the after effects, and not only your life, but everybody around you. Tomorrow we are having car safety day, and all of us who are going to be in the parking lot, if we have our seatbelts on, we get candy, so everybody's going to have their seatbelt on. Then we have Kick Butts Day on Wednesday, which is all about not smoking, and then we have Grim Reaper Day, where we get to see a visual effect of how many students can really be hurt by drunk driving. And then Friday is going to be our final day, so I encourage everyone in Guilford, and I'm inviting you all to participate in this. On Friday, it's Wear Sad Colors Day, so wear black and red to support our youth for not making destructive choices here in Guilford. So basically what's happening with SAD Week is we're learning wonderful things all week long in the most fun ways with incentives.
And Mr. Vicenti, Dr. Meyer, and Dr. Keene are planning to go to a high school in New York to investigate their International Baccalaureate program, also known as IB, and the possibility of adding a Performing Arts Academy to the new high school.
Along with the Financial Academy and I believe Computer Science. So good stuff for our future.
I haven't had much exposure to the IB program, but from what I've seen or talked to from other kids around the country, they seem pretty excited about it. It seems like you can get a lot more in-depth into the subject that you're studying. Also, I'm sure most of you know this past weekend was the spelling bee. It actually attracted a lot. I did it last year, and a lot more kids participated this year. It was good. I'm sure Dr. Freeman remembers our little whiteboard debacle where we accidentally used permanent marker, and it would not erase.
But the word you permanently wrote was correctly spelled.
Yes, it was. I just wanted to make sure you saw
That
it.
was a good move.
That abattoir. It's going to be ingrained in my head forever now.
Additionally, on April 26th, the junior prom will be happening, and as you guys especially know, that'll be the first junior prom to be off campus. The theme is A Night in Paris, so it's guaranteed to be classy and safe, and also precautions are being made that juniors are being told that this is not the prom where they should be spending tons of money. So like come in your own car even though it's at a different campus. Nobody's being encouraged to spend way more. So it's going to be a really fun night, and the class officers and especially the class advisors, Mr. Buno and Miss Lieberman have been working extremely hard on making this prom really special. So we're looking forward to it.
As a result of all the days lost on account of weather, the AP schedule was slightly revised. Some AP tests are still going to be during the first 2 weeks of May, but others have been pushed back to the last 2 weeks. The provision that the College Board has set down is that they can only have, in the last 2 weeks of May, there can only be 3 days devoted to testing, whereas the full 5 days can be devoted to testing in the first 2 weeks. So they were accommodating, in terms of our schedule.
Thankfully, too, because things were getting a little tight with those curriculums. Also coming up on the last day of break on April 21st, also my birthday, is the pancake breakfast for project graduation. They're trying to raise some money, so I encourage you to all come out and get a nice...
Where is that going to be?
I want to say it's at the Knights of Columbus. Knights of Columbus, yes.
Okay. The Saturday of last week, there was actually a quiz bowl that I took part in. A couple of kids from Guilford went up against a team from Hand. It was actually taped at GCTV Studios, and they asked us a bunch of questions, sort of Jeopardy style, about different subject areas in schools. It was a lot of fun.
Also, in light of first robotics team coming, I would be remiss not to mention the JETS teams, which is now called teams, which is kind of confusing when you want to say teams, but. They came in first in a computer science test. Here are some of the physics students at the high school. So they're being compared now nationally for their score to see if they're going to be invited down to Florida for a weekend of computer science and celebration.
Terrific.
Cool.
And a quick catch up with one of our elementary schools, A.W. Cox, has so many exciting things happening. Recently, their drama club just finished Finding Nemo, which was a wonderful, adorable, cute little play/musical, with a special appearance by Principal Augustine, which I'm so disappointed that I couldn't make it because of the Voices Showcase, but I've seen some wonderful video clips, and that's way too cool that we're already pre-exposing kids that young to theater, so keep it up, guys. All right, additionally, the students have been working on a salad garden, and they're doing it on the grounds of the Meadad Stone Tavern Museum. And basically what it is all the kids are learning how to they're learning how to plant short-time vegetables that could be found in a salad, and then they're learning how to grow them naturally and bringing them back to the classroom and sharing the food that they're making with each other, which is really cool because, like the robotics video said, we're an agricultural community, so keeping the generations involved. Additionally, the Climate Committee at A.W. Cox started a project called Circle of Friends, and what they've done is had every kid in the school write a way that they make friends, or write a way that how they personally have made friends on a piece of paper, and then made a whole link that wraps the entire school to show that they're all united and whatnot. And third time is a charm. The PTO finally had their Fall Harvest Festival last Saturday, and they're thrilled because it was the third time. But something wonderful is always happening at A.W. Cox.
really think we should start taking notes from them, because they've got creativity that goes leaps and bounds above us sometimes.
Could be the young teaching the old, you know what I'm saying?
That's about it for us.
Terrific, that's it? All right,
Just
yes.
to expand on the trip on this Friday, there are going to be 8 teachers, Mr. Guarino, Mr. Macenti, and myself, and going to travel to North Shore High School in Suffolk County. We leave at 6 a.m. from here and return around the same time, 12 hours later. This is a school that has had an international baccalaureate program for 10 years. And we're going there with tons of questions that we want to get answered. They also have 2 academies, one in finance and the other in information technology. And we want to see how that works also. So we're going with an open mind to gather data and come back, and I will certainly keep the board informed as to what we find and what the issues are. But as Mike said, it's a exciting, at least on paper, program, and we're going to find out what it's really like in person. So hopefully at some point down the line, Dr. Friedman will have a workshop on international baccalaureate.
Good. All right, anything else for the student reps?
Question?
At the risk of embarrassing our student representative, it's a season to choose for colleges, and I've heard from him that he is making a difficult decision between Columbia, Harvard, Yale, Stanford, or Brown.
Yeah. I lucked
I
out.
think speaks well to
That's
the
terrific.
school system.
Thank
and
you.
I'm sure they're fighting over you, so congratulations.
Thank you very much.
If you're willing to tell us at some point which one you choose.
Yeah, I will definitely next
Just-
meeting.
I was just
I'll
at
have a decision
Stanford,
for you.
actually. I was just in Palo Alto and worked,
How was it?
working with their chairman of their sports medicine department, so if you needed a connection there, I can make it.
I mean, I haven't actually been out to see the school, but they're smart. They make their admitted students weekend the weekend before you have to decide where you're going to go. So you come back and you're like, I gotta choose somewhere. So
It's not bad.
Got a good
I like
reputation.
Providence, but it's not bad. Well, that's terrific.
Well, I'm in sort of a similar position. It's sort of between a number of schools that I've been accepted to. It's probably going to be a choice between Holy Cross or Connecticut College, but
Both great schools.
Congratulations.
thank you.
That's really exciting.
I've been enrolled since November, but I'm going to Columbia
beat all
College,
of us.
Chicago next year.
she beat us all.
I'm sorry, where are you going? Chicago?
Columbia College, Chicago,
Oh, great.
and pursuing musical theater.
Good for you. Terrific. Gee, I'm surprised that you're going to pursue it.
Really? Nobody was expecting
We can't
that.
put on a show like Aaliyah can, but
Remind me to... I'm stunned.
How animated are you?
Well, that's terrific. Well, congratulations to all three.
thank you. Thank you very much.
That's terrific.
Absolutely.
Thanks.
Well, go home
Great.
and...
Well, good evening. Have a wonderful rest of the meeting.
Yep.
It's starting to be beautiful, so everybody in Guilford celebrate because we deserve this spring.
See you all.
Thank you all
Pancake
very
breakfast.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, sorry about that, but we'll try to jinx. So of the people that are here, maybe half a dozen with lakes, a few with, I'm trying to figure out what try to move as many people as we can, as quickly as we can.
So communication.
Yeah, I was just,
Or we should do public.
well, public forum for topics on the board agenda, and I guess if it's going to be, if it's related to anything, maybe if it's related to the lakes issue, that we do it maybe at that time, if that makes sense. I'll do whatever people want.
Why not have them come up now?
Well, it's going to be disjointed, that's all. But I don't care, whatever you all want to do. Do people want to make comments about anything to do? I guess I should ask that, the foundational question. Does anybody want to make any comments on something that's on the agenda at this point? All right, well, that sort of takes care of that, doesn't it?
Solves that problem.
Brilliant organizing.
Next.
Item 6 is communications, and again, I think we all got a lot of communications about the lakes, and I think we'll bring those up. I think many of us have talked to Dr. Freeman about them, and I think we'll just maybe just hold off talking about those until Dr. Freeman's report. So I think we're up to your report, right?
Great. So we want to begin tonight by inviting Chef Tim to join us. We have a presentation on food services, in Guilford Schools. And Tim's going to join us at the podium, and I'm going to get this up and running.
It's the P on the bottom. Paul, it's already open.
You got it open already. There you go. You've got your clicker?
What's that? I got it. Yeah, let's see if it works.
You're all set?
Oh, it works. We're good to go. All right. We only have 700 slides, so sit back and relax. You're in for a show. The mission that I came up with when I came to Guilford, several months ago is a mission to serve all students real food and to teach our students where food comes from. Striving to combine physical activity and hands-on learning in an effort to grow healthy kids. We have the garden at Cox, and then hopefully we have more gardens showing up in other schools. But as everybody's pointed out, and as I know, Guilford's a farming community, so it only makes sense that we grow healthy kids. And working through food service, for me, it makes sense. So I have a number of goals that I just wanted to kind of point out over the next 3 or 4 hours. One is to increase school breakfast. School breakfast is vital for kids. There's a number of kids in every town that absolutely need to eat breakfast, and then the return on investment for having a school breakfast program is great for us. So our goal is to increase school breakfast in all the elementary schools between now and the end of the school year. And then next year we want to add school breakfast to the middle and high schools. And then we want to work with the managers and the staff to roll out a hot breakfast program too in the cold winter months. So this is just some stats about why school breakfast is so important. It helps students shine. 62% of American teachers see kids who come to school hungry because they don't eat at home. My goal in life is to end childhood hunger, and starting one kid at a time is something that I want to do. And why is breakfast so important? This is a quote from an elementary school teacher in Maryland, which is it's pretty mind-boggling. Basically, that the student was taking a test and asked for help, and the teacher said, what part of the test do you need help on? And it wasn't that she needed help on the test, she needed help because she was hungry and she can't think. So, that just goes to show this can happen in any town, any school in the country. So if we really work together and put together a pretty bang-up school breakfast program, financially our program will succeed, and the kids will succeed, which is really more important. These are some stats. Share Our Strength put together some data that shows that, and that slide's pretty small, that 17.5% have higher scores, and they go to school more, and they graduate more, and they earn more money when they go into the real world by getting a good breakfast. So it just it goes to show that there is data to back up breakfast. It's not just that we want to feed kids Rice Krispies every day for the heck of it. Number 2 is to increase our training of our staff. So we've had these Lunch Lady Boot Camp training sessions. Several of them have gotten canceled thanks to the hurricane and the snow and all that kind of stuff. But we finally had our last boot camp for the elementary workers last week at Cox School, and it was just a good opportunity for the staff to come together. And they know each other because they work in the system, but they don't really know each other, and they don't know how everyone works. So to get 8 women into the room together, and myself, and then brokers and other chefs, and people just to talk to them about food and how to do things a little bit different. It was really good camaraderie and a great opportunity. This was our first boot camp with the middle school workers. Look, they're all smiling. They had a good time, and they got these cool shirts that says Guilford School Food, and they're camouflage. It's all part of the theme, and just trying to do something that's fun. Feeding kids doesn't have to be slopping stuff on a plate. It could be serving great food with a smile, and that's what our goal is. So this is, on the sandwich on the right is a falafel sandwich with tzatziki sauce and lettuce, tomato, onion on a flatbread. And it's ideas like this that we bring to the staff and show them what we can do as different things in order to build them as a stronger team, but to give them the opportunities to feed kids better food and something fun. I mean, our ultimate goal is to increase participation in our schools, and the way we're going to do it is by keeping up with the current trends. You know, vegetarian food is pretty popular. Certainly local food is popular, and the more that we can do to educate the staff on that, the better we all are as a team. I threw this slide in about the new meal standards. It's pretty important to talk about. The standards are pretty tough. We're working together as a team to make sure the students are understanding the requirements. The requirements are that there are 5 meal components that the students have available to them. It's milk, a protein, a grain, a fruit, and a vegetable. Students are only required to take 3 of the 5 components, but 1 of the 3 has to be a fruit or a vegetable. If the student doesn't take a fruit or vegetable, then they'd be charged for an a la carte price for the meals. So they're not required to take the milk, they're not required to take the protein, but they have to take a fruit or vegetable. We're working on ways to incorporate different fruits and vegetables into the mix to get kids more variety, but at the same time, you know, cost is always something that we're keeping a keen eye on. So increasing participation, new menu items. We've had really good success, more so in the elementary schools, with our romaine salad with roasted garbanzo beans. Kids like chickpeas. You know, we have to menu legumes every day, or once a week. So we wanted to see how we can do it in a creative way that the kids are going to eat beans, because, well, kids don't typically want to eat beans. So, but if we could do something creative, then, you know, we're in good shape. We're working with sweet potatoes more, because we have to menu an orange or a red vegetable once a week. So sweet potato chips, it's a 1/4-inch chip, and we roast it as a potato. We've worked with industry and food manufacturers to find different items. One is a whole muscle chicken entree items. We've working with a local Connecticut company that has a whole grain pizza dough. It's going over not super great, because it is whole grain pizza dough as opposed to, you know, the good stuff. But, you know, it's a step in the right direction. We're trying different products with the staff and with the kids to get to that point where we can find that perfect product. But we still have a little bit of leeway with the USDA and the regulations. But, you know, we're going to get to that point where we don't have any leeway, so we might as well be ahead of the curve instead of trying to play catch up. And then, you know, my most important goal, it's to increase farmer school in Guilford. I mean, for such a big farming community, it's pretty unbelievable that we hardly have any locally grown products at all in our schools. You know, buying local keeps money in the local economy. It's good for business. It's good for PR. It's good for everything. It's, you know, for kids to really learn where their food comes from is so important. And it doesn't have to stop at produce. I mean, we can look for proteins and in anything. You know, we just have to get to that point where we're you know, ahead of the curve and really doing it. My nickname is the Local Food Dude, which is all about increasing locally grown foods in schools. So it would be, you know, horrible for me to not, you know, put this on the docket. We're working with BuyCTGrown.com and UConn Extension on a pilot program. I'm actually meeting with them tomorrow to figure out distribution. You know, we want to buy from Connecticut. We want to buy from Guilford grown, but then we want to buy from Connecticut grown. And then how do we get all these people together so we know what's available? And so this is part of the pilot program. Guilford's the only school district in the state that's part of this pilot right now, and the idea is to grow this program so that more schools can get on board for the future. And you're lucky that the PowerPoint only has a couple more slides left, so we're in good shape. But so I wanted to point out Cox School of the Garden has garlic coming up out of the ground right now, and the kids are planting lettuce and radish seeds, and I know the kids are really excited about it. Paul and I are actually speaking on Wednesday night at the library, 7 o'clock. and we're going to be discussing the school garden at Cox in a little bit more detail, but it's a fantastic program. We'd like to be able to get to the point where all the schools have gardens, and then we're working on grant opportunities to get salad bars at least into our elementary schools for next school year, and ideally we should be growing the food in the garden and putting it on the salad bars, and then the kids are putting it in their mouths, and then we're in good shape. It's a simple process. It's not like we can't do it. That's it. That's all I got. You guys got lucky tonight, huh?
All right.
Look at that. So I'm open for questions. I don't know if I'm going to have the answers, but.
Questions, comments, thoughts?
How is participation going?
Participation is okay. It's not great. It's trending about the same as the rest of the country. I met with the school food service director today from one of the cities, and they're from up until February, they're $500,000 in the hole compared to last year. And that trend is basically the same everywhere else in the state. And then last month I was in Washington, D.C. for the Legislative Action Conference. And across the country, participation is down so much, and food cost is up a lot because of the requirement of the fruits and vegetables. So.
Well, I know everybody, I think all of us who have kids in the district have noticed a real difference over the last, some number of months or year. The number of days that I get asked, why can't you do something about that gray meat with all those meetings you go to? Those have faded.
That's good, good. It's fading. You know, it's baby steps, though. Nothing, we can't change it overnight. I mean, it'd be great to come in and revamp everything, but since we're feeding kids, as you all know, kids would be like, poof, no way. I'll bring peanut butter and jelly from home, and that's it. And, we don't want to get to that point because we're running a business. We need to keep our participation at least where we are. Certainly we want to grow it.
We've come a long way from the cupcake wars that we fought 7 years ago, when we suggested strongly that parents not bring cupcakes to celebrate a kid's birthday in school, and we not use food as rewards or punishment, and that was battles 7 years ago. And now we're talking about nutrition and health and other issues, as well as the finances.
Right. Well, I mean, we're getting to that point, but I don't think we're there yet, because if a kid wears a seatbelt to school, then they're going to give him a piece of candy. So I guess we're, maybe they're not bringing cupcakes then, but we're rewarding them for wearing a seatbelt.
It actually crossed my mind that when he said that.
Where's the carrot and the stick? Let's get the carrot.
Well, the Health Advisory Committee, which Tim is working with us on, is looking at the wellness policy. And we have a number of people on the committee that are really dedicated to kind of supporting what you're talking about. But we also have had, which is great, and maybe it happened in the past, I'm new to the committee within the last year and a half, but we've had members of the food service sit on the committee as well. I mean, it's been a really great conversation, collaboration, and I know if you haven't heard from members of us already, you'll be hearing soon to kind of do even more.
Already got it.
Yeah,
got
right.
the memo.
So, but it's exciting. It's really great. I mean, it's because, Alan, like you said, I mean, I think that we really are interested that committee is really interested in just kind of furthering this kind of education and provision of kind of healthier food in all aspects, so.
What is exciting for me is the way that the conversation is coming together. So we've got collaboration between the business office and what's happening in the business end. We've got collaboration in the kitchens and in the food service department, and staff members are involved in moving this forward and what's happening. The garden at Cox is being done in partnership with the Guilford Garden Club, and GFFE has invited Chef Tim and myself to tell them the story about what we're trying to do and where we're trying to go with the food service in Guilford. So it is a collaborative effort. It involves everybody from the serving line up through the superintendent, and we're excited about moving this forward. And it's baby steps. It's a little bit at a time.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I'm just a good-looking spokesperson. My staff does all the work. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, anything
Keep
else?
up the good work.
Yeah, absolutely true.
Yeah.
We all see great improvement, and just and delighted that you're you're making the changes, and we expect to see great things.
Thanks.
And there's a highlight video on the website of food service and the latest boot camp, which is on the front page of our website if you'd like to see more. Thank you.
Thanks.
Terrific. Thank you. All right, Dr. Freeman, budget update. This shouldn't be lengthy.
No.
Although maybe the quietest referendum ever in the history of the town. I mean,
Does that make you nervous?
I don't know. Everything makes me nervous, but it's just. It's very quiet. But in any event,
The only update is to say that it has been, in my estimation, a very collaborative and open budget season. We are very proud of the budget that we've put together and that we have put forward. Polls will be open all day tomorrow, and I would encourage all of our community members to go out, to participate, and to support what I see as a very positive budget that, as we've said in every meeting, is forward-looking and will only help to continue to move these schools forward and be more successful. And our budget remains on our website. If people have specific items or interests, they can look at our budget on the website for specific detail.
okay. All right. Anything else on that? If not, the Guilford Lakes multi-age update.
Yeah, I did want to talk about this a little bit tonight. I know that many board members have received communications about the multi-age classrooms at Guilford Lakes. Mrs. Hale and I have received many communications after a communication went out from the school informing parents that the multi-age classrooms next year would be separated, that there would be no multi-age component of that classroom. There was some provision made to continue the looping element, but the multi-age component was to be sunsetted. Mrs. Hale and I received a lot of communication. I know that the board members received quite a bit of communication. And a week ago tonight, we hosted a parent forum. We invited community members to come into Lake School and to talk about that decision and that communication. The fact is, that evening event and that conversation should have happened earlier, and I acknowledge that that was a shortcoming on my part. We underestimated the emotion that was connected to that multi-age classroom, and I'm glad that we had the evening. We had parents of current first and second graders who are scheduled into the multi-age classroom. We had parents of kindergarten and preschool students who were looking forward to being in that classroom. And we had students who were juniors and seniors in this high school who had been in a multi-age classroom years ago, who came out and shared their concerns, asked questions, and talked about their passion for that multi-age classroom. There were a number of staff members from Lake School who were present for the evening, and there were a number of board members who were present for the evening, and I appreciate all of your presence. Since that time, I have had continued conversations with Mrs. Hale, and on Friday joined a meeting at Lakes of the Lakes teachers, and in part was able to participate and in part was able to listen as that group started the meeting by saying, what did we hear Monday night, and what feedback, what input do we need to take into consideration as we move forward? So my update for the board is simply to say that we have listened. I think that we've listened well to the community, and at this point, the team at Lakes is reassessing that decision and the plan moving forward for next year. I was excited about what I heard in that meeting with Mrs. Hale and her staff. I think we need time. I think we need to be able to look at schedule options. So I don't think that we will have detail around any decision until after the April vacation. But I'm excited about the conversation that's continuing at Lakes, and I'm looking forward to being able to have a follow-up conversation with the community where we invite parents who are interested in that classroom back into Lake School, talk about what our plans are, not just for one or two classes of 20 or 40 students, and not just for next year, but broadly moving forward. I think part of the evening was particularly interesting as we were making connections between and among not just the multi-age classroom at Lakes, but the work that we're doing as a district around the principles of learning, the work that we're doing prospectively around the Common Core state standards, other conversations that we've had community-wide about really high-achieving students in the classrooms. And I think that there's more to the conversation than just talking about isolated classrooms, even if the experience in those isolated classrooms is a really positive experience for those students. It was an exciting meeting on Friday. I'm looking forward to continuing the work. I have the impression that there are parents here tonight who'd like to share some public comment about the same topic. And I know Mrs. Hale is here. We're happy to answer questions from the board as well on our work moving forward.
Questions? Yeah.
I'd like to hear from the public, but I guess one of my questions, I spent the time to go to the workshop, which was very helpful. I think a lot of the issues came out of the fact that this, for a lot of parents, seemed to sort of just come out of the woodwork. And I understand there's a lot more thought and consideration that went into this. But when I kind of look at a program that's been around for 16 or 17 years, and then we're looking at doing away with it, you know, I kind of made a little list of why this might happen this year. And I've got, it could be a teacher issue. There's, you know, maybe people are turning over at Lakes. There's a new principal. There's a new superintendent. The class sizes are decreasing slightly, and we've got CCSS coming in. Could you comment on the relative weight of those issues in terms of what sort of prompted this to happen?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. And I haven't gone through and sorted them in my mind and laid weightings to each of them. But in that evening, as we talked about it, we discussed the fact that any decision is always a confluence of factors that come together. I think there's always going to be an element of change in administration. So I think the fact that, yes, both I and Mrs. Hale are new, we're looking at what's happening in that school and how we can spread resources most equitably across that school. I think those are probably contributing factors. I think most specifically, the issue that was looked at the school level was an issue of enrollment and class loading. And it's important to note that it's an issue of enrollment and class loading over 2 years. Because in the areas where those students do work together cross-grade, you've got a 2-year curriculum loop that rolls out. So the students this year are currently addressing second grade topics when they're talking about social studies and science. Bless you. So when you make a decision about a program like that, there is a certain amount of urgency if you're looking to make a decision because you've got almost a 2-year window. If the decision is forestalled for a year, the students who come in next year will have, and I may have said that backwards, they're doing first grade curriculum this year, which makes it an easy year to roll everybody forward. If it were to be forestalled for a year, the students next year would be working on second grade topics, and then you would have students who are out of sync if we simply sunsetted the program or the classroom and moved them forward to the next level. There was quite a bit of conversation in the meeting Monday night about Common Core state standards. And I want to be careful as I speak to that because I want to be careful about not painting Common Core state standards as a boogeyman and not identifying Common Core as a reason for making other unpopular decisions. But Common Core is important and does involve a lot. And this board, in conversations about Common Core, has expressed concern about how the teachers are holding up under the weight of all the new expectations, particularly at the elementary level where teachers are going to be both English language arts and math teachers and are absorbing shifts in both sides of that curriculum. There is a certain amount of concern for how much teachers are being asked to absorb moving forward. At the conversation at Adams where we talked about our highest achieving students, there was quite a bit of conversation about differentiation. And concerns were raised in that meeting about how well can teachers truly be differentiating and how fair is it to expect differentiation from teachers. It's a difficult thing to expect. It's more difficult when you look across multiple grade levels being combined. And so the idea of trying to make decisions that helps teachers to reduce the workload and be able to focus on areas that we want to be able to focus in on. All of those were contributing factors into the decision that Mrs. Hale and her team and I made and then communicated to the community. What we missed in that was we missed the opportunity for the community to come in and share their perspectives. That happened belatedly, but it happened Monday night, and so what we are doing now is we're looking at all of those other factors and adding that parental voice to the considerations as we revisit this decision. I know those were general responses.
But, I mean, from a board perspective, I'm trying to think about this district-wide, and we've talked about the possibility of actually looking at even expanding multi-age, and yet this seems to be a step in the other direction. And I guess I'm wondering, does CCSS work against
doing, but you're saying that it's more difficult to do CCSS in a multi-age classroom?
No, not at all. Actually, part of it simply has to do, and it does go back to the conversation that we had in this room the end of last school year. We talked about both multi-age and looping as possible opportunities.
And can you just, for everybody's benefit, including mine, redefine looping versus multi-age?
Sure. Looping is the practice of having a group of students stay with a group of teachers for more than one traditional school year. So the easiest way to envision that is that 20 first graders are assigned to Dr. Keene as their first grade teacher, and at the end of that June, teacher and students both graduate to second grade together. That's the easiest description of looping. Multi-age is the practice of taking students from different traditional grades and mixing them together. So the idea of putting 10 first graders and 10 second graders in a classroom together. Generally, multi-age is accepted as having those students be together for the full experience. All, and anybody like a superintendent walking into that classroom at any time during a given day or week would be hard pressed to sort the first graders from the second graders. Looping is generally always a component of multi-age instruction, because what happens is at the end of each year, the older students, the second graders or the eighth graders, may graduate off of the team, and a new group of younger students come onto the team, the first graders or the seventh graders who join the team. When we spoke last year about the idea of actually expanding the possibilities of multi-age or looping across the school district, I think Dr. Keene and I both spoke in support of those and cautioned that you have to have appropriate training, you have to have appropriate resources. Teachers who are asked to go into those settings need to be appropriately supported and resourced when they go into those settings. On Monday evening at Lakes, the question came up, why do we hear often about multi-age in other districts or looping in other districts that fails when ours has held on for 16 years? My answer was that oftentimes those decisions are made out of expediency. There's a class with a bubble, and you're stuck trying to decide, do we have 3 sections or 4 sections next year? The numbers aren't good in either case, so you make 3.5 sections between 2 grades. In those cases, oftentimes that experience doesn't last, it doesn't take, because the teachers aren't invested, proper training, proper materials haven't been provided. I know that when I sat here a year ago and talked about expanding those opportunities, and then this year there's a decision made to curtail that opportunity, seems contradictory. I think there are elements of both multi-age and looping that can be very supportive of the Common Core state standards and high-achieving students. I think we had the conversation when we talked around high-achieving students. I think particularly looping can be very supportive of the idea of doing fewer things but spending more time and going deeper. The idea of a teacher having students for 2 full years could really slow down the game and allow that group of people, student and teacher, to explore those items in depth. What I worry about is the capacity of this district and the staff members to do everything all at once. And there may need to be some staging. We may need to master the basic shifts of the Common Core before we're ready to start adding more elements more broadly, like looping or like multi-age. I think there can be a very close relationship between the two. I also think that the Common Core is a set of instructional curricular outcomes with instructional values connected to that. That's completely divorced from the way that we load students into classrooms. There doesn't need to be any direct connection between the way that we group students in those curricular outcomes. And there may be a phase-in period, there may be training, there may be different options offered. There's lots of different ways to look at how you load students into a classroom, how you pair students with teachers that don't have any direct relationship to Common Core. There will be school districts that do very well with Common Core that have traditional single grade structures, 2-year looping structures, and maybe even multi-age structures. That was a really long-winded answer, Chris, I apologize.
I'd like to hear from I do have a communication about this. I don't have to do it right now, but maybe after the public about CCSS, and that I think relates to this, I'd like to read. Okay. But
I just want to say that we, and I hope tomorrow's election doesn't prove me wrong, but this is a wonderful community that is very supportive and has been of education. They have approved budgets. They have approved a huge referendum for a brand-new high school and so on. And the fact that there are lots of parents here tonight and last Monday is a testament to their concern. I'm delighted that the administration is open and has been talking about rethinking a decision and planning for the future, given the input that we all heard on Monday night. The stakeholders range from grandparents like myself, whose grandkids, both of whom went through the multi-age program, to some very poignant letters from middle school and high school students who talked about the mentoring that they received as youngers from olders and how that was helpful in their own transitions to middle school and high school. Those are very potent pieces of data. The Common Core and teacher evaluations and everything else is coming down from above. And we are, as a district, grappling with it and trying to make it work in our district. And I think we must be, throughout this process, sensitive to what the students and parents are feeling and saying, and being open to listening to them as we move forward in our programs. I think the experience with the multi-age thing, I personally am very committed to that, having seen it firsthand and observed my grandkids in the program. I listened, as we all did on Monday night, to a lot of parents, and actually we had a quorum of the board sitting there listening, for the most part, to what was said.
No, you had members of the board present. It was a
Okay.
forum.
It was not a meeting.
It wasn't a
No
meeting.
discussion among board members.
It was a discussion. But
Sorry, you're a lawyer.
that stuff is important, and I hope the parents and others are comfortable enough to come up to the podium and share with us any thoughts they may have.
Well, any other questions, board member comments, questions?
Just, I was appreciative to hear the comments likewise at that meeting and to get the input. And I know Dr. Freeman apologized for the timing and spoke of that here tonight as well, that recognizing that it was backwards in terms of listening before action came forward to involve those people. So good warning step, and I appreciate your willingness to take the actions that you have here.
Anybody here want to say anything? Any follow-up from anybody on this particular issue? Well,
I did want to say that I'm very much for the multi-age program. One of my daughters went through it. My other one did not make the lottery because it was extremely oversubscribed. All my kids went through Montessori school since pre-K. I think the learning experience of having olders and youngers in different grades has just, I guess, been a great experience, not only for them, but also for us as parents. And I haven't been around the last month very much, but so I was kind of surprised to hear about this, but I just wanted to put my support in for the multi-age program.
One of the things I do want to add, and I think that one of the unexpected positives that has come out of this is that there has been an outpouring of communication around that school and around all classrooms in that school over the last week. So Mrs. Hale and I have received communications from families and from students who have gone through the multi-age classrooms who are now juniors and seniors in this school. But likewise, we've received communications from parents and from students throughout the building who are having really positive experiences in all the classrooms. And I do want to be cautious over the last week that we're not just highlighting a couple of classrooms at Lakes or at any of our elementary schools to say what a fantastic experience. And I think one of the most insightful comments that was shared Monday night was that the multi-age classroom is different, and sometimes different is just different, but that's not to say that we're not having really exceptional experiences in all of our elementary schools and in all of our classrooms. And I do just want to make sure that piece gets communicated, and it has in fact been one of the unexpected positive outcomes of the last week, because I know that Mrs. Hale and I have both really appreciated all of those communications broadly, and they've been very much appreciated. The communications around all of this. Monday night was was, I thought, a really healthy evening. It was also a really emotional evening for a lot of people, and that emotion has continued throughout the week. And quite honestly, a week out, it's turned into really positive support and emotion around that school, and that's a nice thing to see. So as we finished last week with a meeting on Friday, there was enthusiasm, there was creativity in the room, and I'm looking forward to the work that gets done in the next few days and next few weeks moving forward.
Yeah, I guess I just got two quick comments. We did meet with the teachers more, as our annual meeting with the teachers informally at our last workshop meeting, not Lakes teachers, but teachers from all over the district. And it's always, I think, one of the best meetings of the year, frankly. But I think it's really hard to articulate clearly just how, and I want to pick the right word, how concerned the teachers are with the new evaluation model that the state is telling us to adopt. They are very concerned also about Common Core state standards and how that's going to change not only the style of teaching but the substance of teaching. And so to the extent that there is discussion about expanding something, it is clearly not the year. They are very, very focused on trying to make sure that we do the evaluation process correctly and that they get the Common Core state standards correctly. The other thing is, I think one of the things we really respect about the current administration and frankly the last administration of the district is that if something needs to be reconsidered, it gets reconsidered, and with no thumb on the scale. And trust me, nobody is going to say, well, wait a minute, you made the decision, you got to stick with it. No, start over. It's a clean slate, I think, and that's the way you've addressed it. And I know that there is no reason at all to go into whatever the next steps are with a presumption that the last decision is going to be the next decision, and that because the fact is, as I think you've mentioned, there was a piece that it was not there, that wasn't part of the formula, part of the decision-making process, and that piece may well be enough in combination with other things to come out with a completely different result, or some result that's somewhat different, or a lot different, or something else. So nobody
options on the table.
All options on the table, and nobody is going to say, well, wait a minute, if you thought it was such a great idea, why did you change your mind? Nobody's going to do that, not here.
Our commitment is to do the best job that we can and to serve our students in the best way that we can. And if that means reconsidering a decision about basketball on a Saturday or about class distributions in one of the schools, if there's a good piece to this, it's that this communication went out in early April. It did not go out in late June. And so we have time to collect more information, to slow this down, and to go back to the table and talk about it further. And that's what we did on Friday. No decision has been made because the fact is there were a lot of good ideas getting kicked around, and we need to look at some of them more deeply. Whether it's the same decision, a version of that decision, or a different decision, we need to give that staff and that principal time to look at their options on the table and to digest the new data that's been added to the decision-making process.
Okay. All right, yes.
So I just want to say, I have full faith in the administration to take this under consideration, and I think that's a great way to approach it. I guess, again, from the board perspective, I view this as a learning experience on a district-wide basis, and perhaps we can look at how we're shepherding some of these programs. And obviously, this program was a huge success, at least for some parents and students, so learning about how that might be expanded or used in other situations in a way that doesn't rely on an individual teacher, but is more programmatic from the superintendent's office. I did want to share this communication that I think relates to this as far as CCSS and instruction that I received. And it starts, the last time I wrote you, I gave you the anecdote of how our second grader was told that he could not use multiplication to solve the problem. We just got back from our parent-teacher conference last night, and we asked his teacher about that. She said that the teachers were given explicit instruction from the new math specialist that they were not to discuss multiplication in second grade, that multiplication would be covered extensively in third grade. The reason I'm writing this is I believe this is a particularly good example to open a dialogue on the relationship of the CCSS and more advanced students. And she cites a quote from the NAGC, National Association for the Gifted site. Although the CCSS are considered to be more rigorous than most current state standards, they fall short in meeting the specific needs of gifted learners, and if held strictly to the standard, could actually limit learning. To overcome this pitfall, it is imperative that gifted educators create a full range of supports for high-ability learners through differentiated curriculum, instruction, and assessments. And I guess, you know, my take-home from this is, I mean, it's, first of all, is that happening? Are we telling teachers they can't teach certain subjects? And second of all, do you agree with that assessment that the CCSS may actually limit some of the high-achieving learners in terms of its curricular approach?
No, I don't think that the CSS will limit high-achieving learners. In fact, I'm one of the people who subscribes to the opposite, that I think it will drive deeper levels of rigor and will help us to help students to look to go deeper into it. I acknowledge that particularly on the math side, there's more that we need to learn about that, and there's more strategy that we need to bring back. I think later this month, two of our elementary principals, and Mrs. Carreri and Dr. Keene, are all attending a workshop that is specifically targeting high-achieving students and Common Core in the area of mathematics. What we have been saying is that we need to look at not always helping students who master what might just be a formulaic mastery to move on. If you are working with subtraction or addition and students have mastered what's happening at the class level, what we want to do is we want to find more challenging ways to drive them deeper into those functions and not immediately saying, let's move you on to the next. And the best example that pops to mind is personal, and I apologize, it applies actually to multiplication, not to addition and subtraction, but the logic is the same. In my Catholic grammar school, all that mattered was that we memorized the multiplication tables. It didn't matter that I had a conceptual understanding of what multiplication was. And so as soon as we could memorize those tables, we were able to move forward to division and then long division. And then you just kept moving forward as long as you were mastering the process and not internalizing a conceptual understanding of it. Common Core is trying to drive deeper towards the conceptual understanding so that students have a really deep conceptual understanding and then move on. And like everything, it's always going to be a combination of conceptual understanding and fluency, and we're going to have to balance the idea of accelerating with the idea of finding more challenging, deeper content.
The reason I think this relates is that potentially multi-age is the way to do that. Because, I mean, it's particularly in math and science, I think there are some kids who just get the concepts, both the depth and the breadth of them, a little bit sooner. And to keep repeating the same thing and going into depth and depth and depth without moving forward is not helping those kids in a lot of cases, I think. So I just think maybe an opportunity to think about how we really approach differentiated instruction.
I agree with you conceptually, and what I'll tell you from my personal experience is that math is always the most challenging area to do multi-age instruction. I apologize. I know that I've been telling a lot of stories from other school districts in the last 2 weeks, but in East Lyme Middle School, we had a 4-year multi-age team that stretched from 5th grade to 8th grade with students in a multi-age setting. We had 5 and 6 multi-age settings and 7, 8 multi-age settings. And the difficulty was always in math. And in fact, the most challenging positions to fill in that school were when we said to math teachers that we want you to teach 2 years of content and we want you to do it in a mixed setting. And they looked at us and said, huh? Math is really, really sequential. And in fact, I believe that in our multi-age classroom at Lakes right now, math is in fact being taught in 2 separate grade levels. There's a first grade section for the first graders and there is a second grade section for the second graders. We do have multi-age opportunities in our multi-age classroom, but I don't believe we're doing mathematics instruction by mixing the kids across grade level. And that's where I go back to really careful hiring and training and support of teachers. That's not to say that I wouldn't love to see multi-year mathematics classrooms in our school district, but I don't believe that's what we have now. And I agree with you, I'd like to get there, and I think that would open up lots of opportunities. But I also agree with Mr. Bloss that we're not ready to ask somebody to do that until we're a little more sure of ourselves around what these shifts, especially in the math area, are. we've got a number of people going to look at high-achieving students in the area of math in Common Core state standards, I think in a couple weeks.
The 23rd and 24th. And just to clarify, our math specialist has been giving, the instruction around the Common Core state standards is, focus where the standards focus. Mainly because, you're talking about number sense. You're talking about arithmetic operations from, addition and subtraction to multiplication. But in the past, we've done a lot of mathematics. We've tried to do statistics and probability and, things like geometry and number sense and place value and on and on and on.
36 strands.
And 36 strands each grade level. And what is happening, or what we've seen across the nation, is that, and when looking at globally, what other countries are doing, they really focus on fewer topics and they do them really, really, really well. And so she is saying focus where the standards are focusing. She's not saying don't you dare teach something. But we also have
That's the message, and I guess that's the part that was alarming to me.
Right, that's why I wanted to clarify that.
If we're really going to do differentiated instruction, if the kid, it's one thing if the kid doesn't have the depth to understand the topics that go before that, but if they're clamoring for instruction on the concepts
that's just why I
and that's
wanted
the
to
question to
clarify,
ask, right.
and that is, and we are going to be working closer with that. But I just wanted to let you know, we're telling everyone, focus where the standards focus. If the standards are really around these kinds of concepts for this grade, then that's where we really want to focus. We want to take them as deep as they can possibly go so that the foundation is very, very deep and clear. So, what we've done in the past in the United States is to say we've got to cover things. We've got to cover the curriculum. We've got to, touch on all these things. And if we touch on all of them, they'll have a better chance of getting them. And so in all of the global assessments, the United States is covered in the 90% of the topics and concepts that are on these global assessments. And I'm talking about TIMSS and PISA and some of those. Some of the other higher performing countries are only covering, if you want to call that covering, between 40 and 50% of the concepts. But yet they're outperforming the United States. And one of the reasons is they're doing those so well that the kids can actually take those concepts and apply them in novel situations where we're just waiting to say, oh, we haven't had that before, so we can't do that problem. And that's not an excuse. We have a lot more work to do around mathematics, but we're taking it very, very seriously. And we're working with teachers, and it is new for teachers, and we do want to meet the needs of all of our kids, and we've got to figure out how best do we do that.
That's
And
right.
making sure that we're assessing them in the right way.
really, the history of education is dominated by swings of the pendulum between
Absolutely.
content and breadth and depth and memorization and understanding. So I just am worried that we don't watch the pendulum swing too far the other way. And
I agree.
I agree with you completely.
Okay.
Okay. Any other comments on this? Okay. Board agenda?
No, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry.
No, you're right, it's board agenda. I thought I had evaluation on my report, I apologize, I don't.
You put it under ours, thank you very much for that. 9.1 is to act on personnel items. There are two. One is to ratify the resignation for the purpose of retirement of Sandra Calamari, a music teacher at Cox and Lakes. Is there a motion to ratify that retirement?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? And to ratify the resignation of Marcia Turner, who's a literacy coach at, so it'll be, we have to start hiring a literacy coach again, I guess. All right. Is there a motion to ratify that resignation?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? I take it the plan would be to replace the literacy coach.
Yes, yes. Both of these individuals have contributed significantly to our schools and our community, one for a little bit longer than the other, but both will be missed and both will be hard to replace.
All right, 9.2 is to approve a donation of $1,699.50 from the Guilford High School Music Boosters for additional support for an accompanist for time. I take it that's 50 hours of time. Is there a motion to accept that, approve that donation?
Second, with thanks.
Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay. No, that's terrific. That's very generous. Once again, I'm going to say this is one of those things that if you saw pay for play, you probably would not see this particular donation on the agenda, would be my guess, but in any event. 9.3, discuss the audit report. We did get the audit report last meeting. Ms. Trudeau, do you want to just highlight it at all? Do you want to say anything?
The audit report was presented to the Board of Finance at the last Board of Finance meeting, and this is a clean audit report, which is the highest recommendation that the auditors can give. There weren't any areas of concerns that were noted in the audit report, so it's just a very good audit report for the June 30th, 2012 year.
Right. Comments, questions? Ms. Renner, did you have any observations about it, since you sort of do this?
Well, we discussed this in the Finance Subcommittee, and I think that we should definitely mention the fact that town-wide, not just related to the education expenditures, but the fund balance is really approaching the level where it's recommended that it be. It's made great strides, so that's a really good thing.
And I would just extend my thanks and my appreciation to the business office. I think that this board may have grown accustomed to clean audit reports. It doesn't happen necessarily in every district every year that you don't have a management letter and you don't have some positive suggestions that are shared from the auditors. And year after year, our office receives a clean report, and it's to their credit.
Well, thank you very much, and we do pick up the paper and we see other districts in trouble, shall we say, with unintended or unapproved, anyway, expenditures of one sort or another, and then surprises about, actually, what was it? One in a suburban town in Hartford just got in trouble with a referendum because the Board of Ed thought it was no big deal that the bids had come out double the amount of a referendum for some kind of an improvement, and they said, it's no big deal, we can just take it from something else, right? And we really haven't had that issue here, and tend to avoid having that issue here. So, all right. So, is there anybody? We don't have to vote to approve the audit report. This is something that's done by the outside, obviously, and by statute. Okay. All right. Let's get on to teacher evaluations, shall we? We put it all off.
Another substantial item on tonight's agenda.
Right.
The teacher evaluation plan and, in fact, the administrator evaluation plan are both before you tonight for your approval for submission. And I just want to take a moment to be very clear that while these plans are essentially ready for submission to the state will review these plans. They may accept them as is. They may suggest revisions. So I do want to be sort of clear in what we're asking the board to approve tonight. We're asking you to approve the documents for submission to the state, and then there may be further revisions. So we're sort of carefully not asking you to approve the actual plan as written, but to approve this plan simply for submission to the state. That being said, I want to open by saying that we are in fact very proud of this plan as it sits in front of you. It is maybe not something that we would have selected to tackle at this time. Our plate is very full, and doing this thorough a revision of teacher evaluation is probably not something that I would have placed in front of the really thorough, thoughtful implementation of Common Core state standards instructionally. I would have timed this differently. Having said that, though, I am very proud of the team that came together and the work that was done on this plan as we approached it. The committee that worked on this document, the teacher document specifically, was a large group that invested a lot of time. It was more than half made of teachers. There were administrative representatives from both the building level and the central office level. Mrs. Dudley served on this committee and put hours into the work that took place. The whole committee met at length, and then subgroups of this committee met for hours to put the work together that came into the document. I do want to note that we continued to have communications with Hartford throughout the process in two ways. One, really directly and at times aggressively lobbying to have some changes made, and in the other way, floating pages and floating sections of the document so that we knew we were working in a way that was going to be efficient. We wanted to put together something that we believed in, but we also wanted to put together something that would be acceptable so that we weren't wasting effort, but that we were moving in a direction that we would be satisfied with in the end. There were a number of priorities that we worked on maintaining as we went through the process. The requirement of redoing the evaluation came from the outside, but as we tackled that expectation, we wanted to first and foremost honor the work that had gone before. We had no window where we thought that we would move away from the work of the last 6 years. Whatever we did with teacher evaluation and however we looked to support and measure teacher effectiveness, we knew that we were going to build on the principles of learning and build on the work that we had done with IFL over the last several years. That was simply non-negotiable. Additionally, we wanted to maintain a focus on a developmental process and a formative tool. Evaluation is first and foremost a tool for helping professionals improve performance. It is secondarily a tool for measuring effectiveness, maybe rating and sorting staff members. And while the guidelines that came out of the state may not have had those priorities in the proper order, we insisted that our document would have those priorities in the proper order. So much work went into this process to make sure that we met the summative requirements of the state, but did it in a way that would maintain a developmental and formative value so that when our administrators are sitting down with our teachers and talking about learning, it is in the service of helping those teachers be better, more effective in the classroom every single day, not simply for the purpose of rating, sorting, or ranking those teachers. And finally, we had a real focus on trying to make this process simple and manageable. I will tell you that we realized all of those priorities, but some to greater degree than others. We maintained our focus on the principles of learning. We did maintain the formative and developmental elements of this plan, and ours is much more simple than the state version that was presented to us, but I won't tell you that it's not a complicated document, and we gave it to you early so that you would have more time than the regular window to look at the document and try to digest the document. In the simplest form, the new teacher evaluation process is made up of 4 components. Each component recognizes a percentage of the overall evaluation. These components are identified in the legislation, as are the values of each of these components. The observation cycle, the process of an evaluator or an administrator going into a classroom, observing instruction, and then working with that teacher following instruction, makes up 40% of the evaluation. A goal, an individual teacher goal that is developed from school-wide parental feedback, makes up 10% of that goal. I said that very carefully because that's not necessarily what was in the press. When this evaluation process was being talked about a little more than a year ago, there was talk about parental feedback and parental surveys and how those would be tied to teacher evaluation. The parental feedback is asked for at a building level annually. It will be analyzed at the building level, and then looking at that parent feedback, every individual teacher with his or her administrator will set a personal goal. And then that goal, the reaching of that goal, will make up 10% of the overall evaluation. I'm not sure that's necessarily the way that that was presented when we first talked about this evaluation, but that is the way that it is described in the state model. Student learning outcomes, that is student performance. Goals, instructional goals that teachers write that are directly and concretely tied to student performance will make up 45% of every teacher's evaluation. And then a whole school goal, a cooperative, collaborative community goal that the whole school invests in and the whole school achieves or not together, will make up 5% of the overall evaluation. All of those components being added together will result in a 4-point rating for each teacher annually. Every teacher annually will be rated between below standard and up to exemplary on a 4-point scale.
Yeah, one of the things Where's the student input?
There isn't space in this evaluation plan for student input. There is an opportunity, there's an opportunity as we move forward, as we move into year 2, that we could build student input in directly, but the state guidelines talked about an option for student input at the high school level. There wasn't an opportunity there. The parent feedback goal, as it's written now, could become a community feedback goal. We recently completed climate surveys that were conducted at each of the schools, where we surveyed parents and staff members and students at each of the locations. That survey could be a survey that is built, but at this point, it's not built into the plan.
I thought one of the biggest issues that we had, not issues you could say, but one of the biggest feedbacks we got was that as a town, we weren't really listening to our students very well.
So you're talking about the developmental assets survey. In the 2-year survey that we've done, that we just completed this year, we've seen real growth in there, but that wasn't necessarily tied directly to teacher evaluation or to the schools. That was actually about the community.
Are those results available?
Yes, I believe Dave presented those results to a Board of Selectmen meeting last week, and I can certainly bring those results and share them with the board as well.
So I understand that the time course here, I mean, we received these last Tuesday and then Thursday, and they're 70 and 80 page documents. What's the pressure to get this in now? And are other districts, have they submitted similar plans, or what?
Yes, districts are beginning to submit. The submission due date is April 15th.
Set
to
by the state.
Right, okay.
And then the state will have feedback or revisions that then come back to us that will be digested by the committee.
Okay, but and so the board has to approve the things that go to the state, and then they come back?
Yes.
Is there another opportunity for us to look at these, or?
They would come back to the committee and then ultimately back to the board, yes.
Okay, because it just wasn't a whole lot of time to.
No, this is not, there's not been a whole lot of time anywhere in this process.
Yeah,
Not a whole lot of time for the committee either to create this.
As an
There's a lot
illustration,
of
as an
pressure.
illustration of this process, at the end of this presentation, we're going to compare the local plan that our committee developed to the state document. Much of our plan, 40% of our plan, is built on a framework for teaching and learning in the classroom. The state, at the beginning of this school year, back in September and October, had a statewide framework that was suggested, and it was told to all of the districts that if you want to adopt the state model, this is the framework through which you will view teaching and learning, and this is the framework on which you will judge 40% of teacher evaluation. We chose to build a local document because we wanted ours to reflect the principles of learning. We have ours because we wrote it locally and just finished writing it a few weeks ago. The state has now announced that they're changing the framework. So if you've adopted the state model, you don't know what lens you're using to judge 40% of teacher performance and evaluation. There have been changes all through this process. And in fact, while next year is the official launch date of this evaluation plan, the state will accept annual rewrites of the evaluation plan, and we are launching the teacher evaluation plan with only 1/3 of our certified teaching staff. So while I'm really proud of the work that has gone into this document and some of the decisions that are made, I have no doubt that there will be adjustments that are made when we finish year one.
So we're basically ahead of the curve because we've decided to do this locally.
I would suggest that yes, we are. And I've had a number of other districts who have been contacting us in the last few weeks saying, State Department asked us to give you a call and ask if we could please see your plan, because there are other districts who are really sort of behind the 8 ball at this point, and they're now drawing the Guilford document to try to take as a starting point to get something ready for submission.
Well, and the other thing is to the extent that are ahead of the curve also in the whole learning walks.
Yes.
And I mean, that folds into this 40%, and we've been doing that for years.
And in fact, around the observation cycle, the state is requiring that in addition to the framework, which is attached to your document as an appendix, in itself is multiple pages long, I think about 13 pages long, Not only do you have to have your framework either locally developed or adopted from the state, you then have to certify that all of the evaluators in the district have been trained and calibrated on that document. And one option is to actually send all of your administrators through an online testing regimen, and they will be scored at the end. And only administrators who have been successfully calibrated can then go into the classroom and conduct the observations that account for 40% of this. That's all to say that in our presentation to the state and how we have calibrated our administrators to use the tool successfully, we are going back 6 years in citing training that has gone on since the initial rollout of learning walks in this district. And we have made the argument to the state that we have been looking at teaching and learning and discussing it as a leadership team for years now, and that we do have a head start on other districts because our administrators are calibrated as to the expectations for good teaching. And in fact, this year, at leadership team meetings, we've been watching videotape of principals debriefing with teachers, and then we are critiquing each other's performance, not just in how you observe a lesson, but then how do you sit with the teacher and talk about that lesson. We've watched Mr. Augustine with a classroom teacher talking about a lesson. We've watched Mrs. McCarthy with a classroom teacher talking about a lesson. We haven't rolled it out for the whole leadership team yet, but Dr. Keene and I have watched Mr. Macenti talking with a teacher after a lesson. We have Mrs. Snerkowski. So we're doing that work by video. We're doing it by Learning Walk. So yeah, I think in that way we are ahead of the curve. All of our administrators will be calibrated on the new tool. There are 4 components. The components are rated on a 4-point scale. For us, in our document, they do make a whole. And when you look at the pie chart, the northern hemisphere of this pie chart, the 4 blocks to the left that represent domain 1, 2, 3, and 4. Those are the 4 domains of teaching and learning that we will look for when we go into the classroom. Those are the 4 instructional domains. Together, they make the 40% of the observation cycle that we just talked about a little bit. I've still got more of the observation cycle. That parent feedback goal makes the other 10%, and together, that makes half of any teacher's evaluation, and it focuses on teacher performance and practice. The southern hemisphere focuses on those student performance outcomes. The southern hemisphere looks at goals that teachers will write for themselves around instruction that are informed from student performance data. No longer is it going to be acceptable to say, I want to do better at differentiating in my classroom, so I'm going to write a goal for myself where I will attend a conference on differentiation, read some articles on differentiation, and engage in a professional dialogue about differentiation. And if I do all those things, we can agree mutually that I've met my goal. These goals all have to be built on measurable student outcomes now. And the last 5% of the southern hemisphere is that whole school goal. Together, we will all join in a measurable goal built on student performance. And that half of the evaluation is all built on learning outcome. That is the part where you have heard in the press talking about measurable student results as part of every teacher's evaluation. We tackle this one hemisphere at a time. So in our plan, there's one part of the plan that talks to those teacher performance and practice outcomes. And in large part, that is built on that framework that we talked about. Our framework is built on several foundational pieces. It is built first on the principles of learning. It secondly is built on the Connecticut Common Core of Teaching and work from Charlotte Danielson and her framework for teaching that the state in large part built much of their plan around. Essentially what we did is we took the state's framework and said they're looking at all the right things, but they're just not speaking about those things. They're not talking about those things in the same way that we've been talking about them here in Guilford. So we did 2 things that were significantly different with our framework. First is that we did not weight it in the way that the state weighted their framework. they weighted the instruction and the environment in the classroom much more heavily than the components of planning and professional activity. We have actually been talking for the last several years about the importance of planning. We've been talking about the fact that student task predicts performance. And in fact, if you plan really well and really thoughtfully up front, and if you have a task or a unit that can extend and students can enter those activities or those tasks at their level and be comfortable and be challenged, whether they are special education students who are struggling learners at one end of the spectrum or really high achieving students at the other end. If you plan that task really, really well, I might walk into the classroom and not see you doing a lot because the students will in fact be owning their own learning, socializing their own intelligence, engaging in accountable talk. One of the most exciting learning walk observations that we conducted this year was watching a group of fourth graders argue about 3 different texts about child labor, and they were debating which of those texts had the most effective introduction. And their papers were full of sticky notes, and they were marked up, and they were annotated, and they were arguing, and they were challenging each other, and they were going back to the text and saying, that's not what the first article said. I've got the first article right here, and you misquoted. What it really said was, and the teacher was sitting back and watching like a hawk, but not doing a lot directly because so much work had gone into the preparation and the rollout that now the students were doing the work, and the teacher's job was to monitor, to pay attention, and then go home and figure out what to do next. So in our framework, planning is weighted equally as any of the other sections. The next component that we did was we then reworded. We took the components of, or the domains of the Connecticut framework, and we re-articulated those with a focus on task, trying to actually force the evaluator to look more at what the students are doing and less at what the teacher is actually doing. Because you measure, just like the whole focus on this, you measure teacher success through student success. And then we re-articulated in the language of the principles of learning. One example, and I don't know how well that shows up behind me there, it's probably hard to see, but to pull just one indicator out of one of the 4 domains, I'll read it to you.
You can't read it.
In domain 3, which is the instructional area, looking at 3C, which talks to student engagement being evident in the classroom. Student engagement in learning is evident. The exemplary band, what we would expect to see in a classroom around this indicator, is that classroom tasks are rigorous, intellectually challenging, relevant to student interests and concerns, and organized around major concepts and the knowledge core. So the first thing that we look at when we walk into a classroom isn't what's the teacher doing. It's actually what are the kids doing? What is the task that the students have been asked to do in this activity that I'm looking at today? And is it rigorous, intellectually challenging, relevant to student interests, connected to their concerns, and organized around the major concepts of the curriculum and the knowledge core of the discipline? That's a big expectation. All students are intellectually engaged in challenging content. Students reflect upon their learning and consolidate their understanding. Students have choice in how they complete tasks, and they serve as resources for one another. Are students being managers of their own learning? Are they asking questions and engaging with other students in the classroom? Are they socializing intelligence? And are they engaging in accountable talk? The structure, pacing of the lesson, and task design allow for all students to enter and engage fully with the task. And in each of the indicators, we've noted the POLs of focus, which principles of learning are at play in each of the specific 17 indicators as they spread across the 14 domains. Part of what we are doing now, the work that we're engaging in now, is creating an electronic version of this rubric that has space for evaluators to actually collect evidence as they go into classrooms. Teachers are being or administrators are being asked to conduct more evaluations than they've conducted in the past. They're using a more rigorous lens to conduct those evaluations, and that only makes 40% of the overall evaluation, where it used to make more like 80% of the overall evaluation, depending on what year a teacher was involved in. So we're working on creating tools to help the administrative team do that more efficiently and more effectively. The Southern Hemisphere is the hemisphere that deals with student learning outcomes, and as I said before, that is primarily built on teacher goal writing. Teachers will continue to write professional goals for themselves. The difference is that they will be attached to specific measurable learning outcomes. Each teacher each year will be asked to write between 1 and 4 student learning objectives. Each of those objectives must have multiple measures, what have been termed indicators of academic growth and development. So you may have a broad goal or a student learning objective that says, my students will master critical concepts of writing arguments. That's not concretely measurable, but you would have an indicator connected to that that might say 90% of my students will score at average 9.5 on the persuasive writing prompt in the CMT District Assessment of Writing holistic score in the CMT or district writing holistic score of a 12-point rubric. That is measurable. At least 90% of my kids are going to score at least 9.5 out of a possible 12. That's a measurable goal, and in fact, it's a standardized measurable goal. You might also say, my students will write an argument to support claims with clear resources and relevant evidence. 90% will score a 3 or 4 on a 4-point scoring rubric focused on the key elements of argumentation. That is also specific, concrete, and measurable, but because that would be a local rubric, it's not a standardized measure. The state requires us that wherever teachers contribute to the standardized state assessments, that we include at least some standardized measures.
So who picks whether that number is going to be 90% or 80% or 70%, and what are the criteria?
The teacher and the evaluator collaboratively, and the criteria are the students that you have in front of you. So every 8th grade teacher might have that same SLO, but my measure and your measure may be different based on the actual students in front of us. If your students are already achieving at that level at 90% and my students are achieving at 85%, it comes down to the actual students sitting in front of each teacher each year. So it'll be based, those indicators of academic growth and development will be based on real student data in the year in which you are writing the goal. So we might have the same SLO, but we might have very different indicators depending on the actual students in your grade book compared to those in my grade book.
If this helps any, I wrote that one. And I went back and looked at 7th grade student average holistic score from the previous year on the persuasive writing. And it was around 8 point, I think, what was it, 9.5? I think it was 8.7. Then I looked at the vertical scales to say what is a reasonable growth in a year. And so then when I saw, well, it's about 0.7 points. And so I said, okay. And I think it was like, that was the average. So I said at least 90% would grow at least 1 year's worth. That's not saying that they couldn't grow more, but that at least 90% of all the students in my class would grow at least 1 year's worth. And this is just a sample. So you have to go back and look at, because it's a growth model, you have to go back and look at where your children are starting and what was reasonable and yet still challenging enough to say, as a teacher, this is going to be my goal, and I'm going to be judged upon this goal.
Every goal has to be both rigorous and achievable. This also goes to some of the conversation around the evaluation plan when it first came out and teachers were saying, well, what if my kids just do better than the classroom of students next to me? How is it fair to measure teacher performance based on student performance? What if I've got a class that has students with some challenge this year and my neighbor has a class that's got less challenge this year? Each goal is written specifically by the teacher. The entire month of September will be spent looking at the data for the students that you've just received into your classroom. The goals aren't required to be written until well into October, I believe, because you're supposed to be writing informed goals that are based on the actual students who are with you, not just a broad goal that could apply any given year. It's supposed to be tailored to the actual group of kids and the data for those kids in front of you.
So they can't be measured until well after the results are all in.
That's one of the hiccups with the process. The state is requiring us, for teachers who contribute to the standardized state tests, to use those standardized state tests as at least one of the indicators, but we don't get the results for that back. So there will be a projected evaluation given at the end of the year, and then all of those evaluations can be amended up and through September of the following year when that data comes in. That is one of the challenges with the process, yes.
So I think it would probably be
Do we need to take a break?
2 minutes.
Okay.
I think it would probably be more challenging to do what I'm going to suggest or ask, but my concern with something like this is that you're going to have kids perhaps who at the beginning of the year are at a 9.5. You're not asking them to move. Why are we not looking at each kid's movement instead of the group as an aggregate? Just because it's that much more complicated?
I would have to think through how you would be able to word, so you might try to word a goal in such a way to say that all of my students will show at least 0.3, and you'd have to think of how to word.
But do you hear what I'm saying?
I do.
mean,
I absolutely do.
It goes back to what Chris was talking about before. I mean, differentiated learning, all that kind of stuff. You know, if you're looking at an average of the 20 kids in front of you, you've got a range. And if the group moves 0.7, that's great as a group, but it doesn't tell us what's happening with individual kids, and it doesn't track necessarily kind of more positive movement or not a lot of movement among individual students.
So I have sort of a broad response to that. I think
If it's going to be really broad,
I think that we may get better and more sophisticated at how we write goals with practice. So I think in the first year, you may have fairly simplistic goals that are written on whole group scoring. And as we all, administrators and teachers, get better at it, I think you're going to see more sophisticated cuts of the data and more sophisticated roles. This is a movement for us where every teacher is expected, in fact, to write a data-based goal.
All right, we need to take a break.